Here are a few things I started doing in my 9th grade literature class to help students become readers again. If you work in a school or if you've been keeping up with like literally anything, you know that we're in like a literacy crisis. Like a lot of students really struggle with reading. It's not just a few kids, it's honestly like most kids. And when I first started teaching last year, this really like bummed me out and I didn't know what to do about it because I'm an ELA teacher. Since this is my 2nd year, I've started to try to tackle reading in the classroom more. I'm not as scared of it as I was last year because it really it freaked me out last year how much kids struggle with reading. The first thing I created last semester, and this is on my Teachers Pay Teachers if you want this, but I created a how to read guide for Gen Z. And on my slides, you can adjust it to Gen Alpha, Gen Z, it doesn't really matter. But I created this last semester because I was like, okay, instead of being like, we've got to read, I'm going to teach them how to read. I know it seems insane because it's like these are like 14, 15-year-olds. And even if I taught seniors, I would teach this with my seniors. I'm not even kidding. It just talks about like, this is an issue. You're not alone. A lot of people struggle with this, but this is how we got to do it. I came up with like 4 different steps, like visualize it, like teach them how to visualize it, reciting voice versus conversational voice, reading space, and building reading stamina. And we just kind of talk about that. And that honestly takes like a majority of the class day. So that's the first thing I do now. Instead of being like, we got to read, or here's your story, or here's a book, like go read it. I teach them how I want them to read in my class, how to literally read. The second thing I started doing, and this is my first time doing it this semester, and so far it's going really well. I told my kids I'm only doing this for the first week and a half, maybe 2 weeks for them. But a strong reader knows how to take an entire page of a story or whatever you're reading and section it off in your brain and ask yourself questions to help you comprehend. But again, a lot of students are struggling, so they can't really do that yet. And this right here is nothing new. I just sectioned off a short story and I asked questions on the side. This is nothing new. It's just like a normal close read. But what I've started doing is explaining this is what a good reader does in their brain. So like when you get your next short story from me and it's just a long page, in your brain or on your paper, I want you to section off what you're going to read. Don't just try to read an entire story because you're probably going to get confused. Take it section by section. That's why we do this. I think explicitly explaining this is what you do when you read is helping them understand. Instead of just being like, oh, here's a close read. We're answering questions and reading it paragraph by paragraph. And the next thing I do with this first short story that my kids read, I went on Canva and I literally designed like what I'm visualizing as I read this. I don't know if y'all know this, but a lot of students struggle with not visualizing anything when they read. Like it's just kind of blank up there. There's nothing going on in there, but they're not picturing anything. And a lot of them really struggle with that. So like the first few short stories, I literally like visualize it for them and I put it up on the board. So like our setting is in India. We have these people, we have a dinner party, we have these, like I literally go like one by one. I just kind of show them what's going on. And if the other characters aren't important for a section, I kind of like blur them out and just reminding them, look, this is what a visualization looks like. This is what's going on in my brain. Like I feel like the first short story this semester, I'm just being very explicit about what I'm doing and how you like read, just to tie it into that like how to read guide for Gen Z. And the last thing that I'm incorporating this semester is independent reading. I have been really scared to approach this because I'm like, how am I going to make sure they actually read? I don't want to take up too much class time. There's all these like, I'm scared to do it. I've literally been like scared to do independent reading in my class. But it's gotten to a point where I'm like, I don't really care. Like we're doing this just like Writer's Notebook. We do Writer's Notebook in my class and I'm like, I don't read it. I don't take it up. This is not for grade. This is for you to become a writer. You're practicing writing. Like you've got to become comfortable with becoming a writer. And I'm not going to be like lingering over your shoulder to make sure you're doing that. So I'm just relaxing. I'm doing the exact same thing with independent reading. And the last thing that I said during my how to read guide for Gen Z, and I like really stress this point to them, I'm like, I'm the type of teacher, I always want to try to get you to do things. I always want to help you, but this is the one thing I cannot make you care. I'm not going to explain to you why it is important that you as a 14 or 15-year-old need to know how to read a book from beginning to end. At least one book throughout the entire year, just one book. I'm not going to explain to you that reading and writing is a privilege that people have fought for all throughout history because reading is power. I'm not going to explain that to you. You've got to figure that out by yourself. You got to have that like intrinsic motivation. You got to want to read. If you want to sit there while everybody else reads, that's fine. Sit there then, but you're not distracting your friends, so don't talk. You can sit there and stare at your page for 15 minutes if that's what you want to do. If you don't want to become a reader, then don't become a reader. But the rest of us are going to become a reader. That's a you decision. Just kind of had to like put it on them at that point. Because for real, dog, I can't explain to you why we got to learn how to read. I can't explain that. And so I've literally given up. I'm not explaining why reading is important anymore. I really don't do it. You either get it or you don't. If you don't want to know how to read, then okay. Go out in the real world and don't know how to read then. I mean, like, I'm just kidding. I love them, but sometimes it's that tough love. Like, you gotta let them struggle. And another way I phrase it with like everything else in my classroom, same thing with writing, same thing with everything. I'm like, this is practice. It's not gonna be easy. It's not gonna be fun at first. We gotta practice to become better at it. Every single day, we've gotta practice. Yeah, they're just like, if you want to take any of that advice, I don't know, that's what's helped me so far. I feel like every semester I do something different. I add a little bit more. Sorry, this video is kind of long, but yeah.